everybody, and thank you for joining us for another week of the RecPoker podcast. You know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune. Normally, this chats edition of the RecPoker podcast would be hosted by the one and only Steve Fredland, but he's tragically still recovering from a bad beat laid on him in Iowa, so he couldn't join us tonight. So I'm Jim Reed, pinch hitting for the one and only. And my little quote to send us off today is one I've said before, but it's true. If you want to go fast, travel alone. And if you want to go far, travel together. And one of the things we do at RecPoker here is we travel together, like with these wizards here on the panel. So wizards, why don't you introduce yourself to RecPoker Nation?
Well, I'm Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter. And I didn't even go on the road trip this weekend, but I had just a blast following along with it. It was a lot of fun, and it sounded like it was even more fun to go. So it was cool for our first real. I mean, I know we already did one, but it was cool for our first really big one. That was great.
And I am John Somsky. I am Poker Geek MN everywhere, and I did have a blast on that road trip. And I have a quote from Michael Gersitz: "Don't get mad that you lost. Get mad because you didn't win."
And I'm Rob Washam, Radman50 everywhere. I have a quote from Epictetus, which is, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control and some things are not."
Oh my God, a stoic revelation, and it wasn't even me that brought it to the table. Rob Washam, way to go.
Hey, it's poker related, man. It really is
right.
Poker related.
Yeah, you can't be results oriented. You can only put your emotional capital behind things that you can control. I couldn't agree more. Nicely done. So some of the things we can control is what we do with our downtime. As the guys have alluded to, we're just getting back from the RecPoker road trip down to the Run Good series in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which was a fantastic time. They broke a bunch of records. I know it's because the RecPoker crew was there crushing the numbers. They blew through their guarantee. They had a fantastic time. Everyone that was there seemed to love it. So I hope we get a chance to do some more of that with Run Good and some other local casinos and stuff like that. The road trips are taken off. It's not just WSOP, but WSOP is right around the corner. It doesn't feel like it, but it's true. I've already done my kind of circle and marker through the schedule once, and there's a lot of fun things to be paying attention to. We might have Kev Math on again sometime over the summer and get into some of the details of some of those tournaments. So I guess, speaking of local casinos, I shouldn't go much further without thanking our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and of course, Mark Prashon and the work he does at Website Amp that keep us going here at RecPoker. So every once in a while in these chats editions, we like to talk about, amongst the group, talk about what's going on in the RecPoker community, RecPoker Nation, review the seminar material that Chris Jones has put together for the previous month. And we thought this one would be a good time because Steve's not here to sort of talk crap about Steve for an hour. No, just kidding. Since Steve's not here, I thought it would be a fun time for each of us. Not everyone can make it to the podcast. So I say each of us, there's only really 4 of us here: John, Rob, Chris, and myself. But it takes a village to make RecPoker go. Andrew, Taylor, Chad, Mark, just to name a few. We don't get far traveling alone, as we said at the very beginning. So since we've only got a few of us here, I thought it would be nice to kind of talk about how we discovered RecPoker, how we learned about it, how we met Steve, and how we kind of became part of the core team here that makes RecPoker what it is. So I know I haven't known Steve the longest. I think John or Rob maybe in this group. So whoever has known Steve the longest, why don't you just get started and tell the audience a little bit about what you were doing in your life when you first bumped into Steve in RecPoker and what the time since then has looked like.
Well, I tell you, it was many, many years ago. There was no such thing as a RecPoker podcast. I was in a tournament. It was a 2-day tournament at Grand Casino Mille Lacs in Minnesota. And it was a grand series, they called it. So it was a significant buy-in. I think it was a $500 or $1,000 buy-in. And I'm at the last level of the night, and this guy joins the table. Never seen him before. Very friendly guy. He starts talking. He's telling me about his charity venture, which is called All In for Africa. So he introduced himself. His name is Steve Fredland, and he was a pretty new poker player. He hadn't been playing that long. And we were both making it into day 2. So we just got into this conversation, and, the day broke, and then we talked a little bit before, we left that night. And he gave me all the details of his All In for Africa tournament, which was happening at Canterbury Park, I think the following month or something like that. So, of course, this is the greatest thing in the world. I have a new person I can talk poker with, right? So I went to the All In for Africa tournament and had a gas. I rebought a couple times. I added on. I did whatever you do at a charity event. I won a bounty for a free poker network buy into a free poker network tournament in Las Vegas. The reward would be a main event seat. And I thought, oh, this is cool. Well, then we went on to chop it 5 ways. So I ended up being one of the finalists at the tournament and ended up chopping it 5 ways. So there was a lot of interaction with Steve at this time, right? So I think probably a month later, I get this email out of the blue from Steve, and he's starting a home game. He wanted to bring a bunch of people that he knew together and start a home game. He called it the Epic League. And so he invited me, and out of the blue, he invited me. I'm going, this is great, because I don't have any home games that I go to. I've mainly just go to the casinos. So that's how it started. I got invited to his Epic Poker League. I started going to that once a month or whenever he had it. I think it was 6 or 7 times a year. And it just became, it just kind of organically happened. Then a while later, after couple of years later, he decided to start a podcast. And what he would do then is he would invite some of the people that he knew to do a little, 10-second to 30-second little blurb that he would include in the podcast. You wouldn't be live in it like we are today. It would just be a little blurb. So I was one of those people that he invited to, put a little blurb in. So I've been with the RecPoker podcast since the very beginning.
I remember hearing your voice in those recordings, in those like sessions. There would be a bunch of different perspectives. It would be like a theme for the episode about a particular spot or a place or a hand or something. And then a series of experts would weigh in, a series of recreational players would weigh in. And I remember when I met you, recognizing your voice and thinking, oh yes, this is Rob from those taped segments
Yep.
earlier. Yeah, I remember.
So so we go way back.
Nice. And then it just got to the point where, well, actually, let's pick up the new RecPoker once we've heard from John and Chris. But so, John, what's your origin story?
Mine is a little bit similar to Rob's. I wasn't involved. I didn't meet Steve quite as early as Rob did. I heard about the first All In for Africa tournament that he was putting on, so I played in that one. And then somehow I talked with him a little bit, and then he asked me if I wanted to be a bounty in the next one. So I was a bounty in all of the All In for Africa tournaments since then. And then in one of them, we were playing at the same table, and he thought, this guy isn't as big of a jerk as I thought he was. And then he invited me to go to the Epic Poker League. So I started playing in that as well. And then when he started the podcast, I occasionally did some of those blurbs as well, and helped out there. And then it just kept evolving, and eventually we are where we are today.
And John, when you were getting involved, and Steve had this vision for sort of like a bigger thing, and what was it about home games that made you decide that this was going to be the part of RecPoker that you were going to get really involved in and behind, and like become the champion for home games?
Well, so I am also the Minnesota ambassador for Ante-Up magazine. I cover Minnesota for Ante-Up. It's not as big of a deal as it sounds. I have a 250-word article that I put in the magazine when they start producing them. They are still on hiatus since COVID for that. But for that, there was the APES, Ante-Up International Poker Series, that was run by Ante-Up. Then when Black Friday hit in 2011, that was the end of the APES series. And then I started jonesing for getting my online play. And APES was for money. They were typically $5 tournaments that you play with other fans of Ante-Up. Well, I couldn't handle not playing, so I started the PAPES series and started to manage that, just following the same schedule that Ante-Up had. And since 2011, I've been doing that, where we'd run tournaments on the 6s, the 6th, 16th, and 26th. It was a variety of Hold'em, Omaha, and other mixed games. And we have 2 tournaments a night, a first one and a second chance in case you got busted out. So I said, well, when RecPoker came around, I said, I could easily run 1 tournament a month for RecPoker. That'd be nothing to do that. So I offered to do that 1 tournament for RecPoker. And then we ended up having someone on and said, we should really start promoting mixed games. So that became 2 tournaments a month for poker.
Doubled your portfolio overnight.
Yep. And then, of course, COVID hit, and now we are up to 10 tournaments a week that we are currently playing.
Plus a monthly Tournament of Champions, plus least 1 annual championship, maybe a
plus
couple invitationals, the heads up ones. Yeah. I think that averages out to certainly like 45 tournaments a month or something like that. Wow. So and John actually he personally deals all of those tournaments. So I know Poker Stars makes it look as though it's all automated, but he's actually there running between the tables, dealing out the cards individually. It's quite a bit of work he does.
My fingers are really kind of screwed up.
Well, we have a lot of fun with John, but he literally runs all the tournaments that we do here at RecPoker. He's picked out these great structures. He makes sure that they're happening on the right nights most of the time, asterisk. And every once in a while, things kind of go your way. But other than that, it's just been flawless and impressive. And we keep adding things to his plate, and he keeps on just knocking it out of the park. So can't wait to see what comes next, John. I know you've got grand plans, and I'm just excited to see what the future has in store. If it's anything like what we're doing today, I mean, how could it be anything but fantastic?
Hopefully.
Chris, what about you?
Well, I was much later to the party. It was really I was a post podcast kind of addition, but it was kind of the early days of the podcast. I can't quite remember when. Maybe it had been going on for a little while, but I had become a listener and I reached out to Steve. I think I'd played with him before, but I didn't really know him at all. But I reached out to him through the podcast and just said, hey, I'm a really avid poker player. I love studying it. But I don't really have a circle of people around me. And like, have you ever thought about taking the podcast and sort of, doing so? And I think he already had some ideas around this. It's not like I came up with the idea of building community around this, but I think it kind of aligned with some of the things that he was thinking about doing. And then it also at the time, and I think still, he was had some visions about writing a book, and I think he's still working on that, and it's still something he's interested in some of his other business. And sort of through talking to me, kind of learned my background and understood that I had a lot of just skills in that area. So we got to talking about that, and through that, we just started like, wow, this could be a really good fit. And then so he invited me to sort of start to take part. I went to a play and learn, I think the first play and learn, which was alive in those days. Sort of, it was at a hotel. I went to that first piece, and that's kind of where I met him for the first time. Although actually, once I saw, I was like, oh yeah, we've played before, but I just didn't know him that well. And then that's kind of led to everything from there, pretty much.
So tell us a little bit about what it is in your personal life, your professional life, that would make Steve think, oh, he's someone I should talk to about books. Like, what would tell us a little bit about yourself in that area?
Well, so I work at a literary arts center. We work with authors, bring them in. We have a annual book festival. We do an annual writers conference. I've written a book about writing a book. I just have a lot, and I work with a lot of editors and agents in the literary world to bring them to these conferences. So I just know a lot about publishing. I know a lot about latest trends in what an author needs to do to get published, and I've written a book myself. So all of those things kind of felt good to Steve.
I just love getting to hear Chris say that he wrote the book on how to write a book, on writing a book. Like that's just something kind of wonderful about that. And I know when Steve did start putting together the community, and like the what would become like the rec.poker and the training site and the membership site that it's become. I know like harnessing your brain was a big part of what Steve was excited about. And I remember thinking like, here's someone who thinks about poker strategically, that knows how to relate ideas to other people. And so that's why I think it was just such a natural fit for you to be the membership content director.
Yeah, and I was really hungry. Like I felt like I had really spent a long time sort of learning and studying poker just in kind of this little silo, and had no one to talk to about it. There were people in my life who like casually like to play poker, or like maybe once every couple months, let's go play, let's put $20 on the table and play some poker, but like nobody who really took the game very seriously. And it's really hard to like, I felt like I'd taken the game as far as I could without sort of growing with others and bouncing ideas and questions off people. So I was really hungry for it too. So it was a good fit.
Yeah, and that's the way I felt too. I mean, now if people that know me now would laugh, I host a weekly podcast. I put my Poker Tracker 4 information out on the internet. Everyone knows my face and my name and the town that I live in and stuff like that. Jim in his 20s would have hives, would just be like freaking out if he knew that I'd taken this kind of approach with my life, because I'm a very private person ordinarily. Like I don't like it when people come on my property. I don't like people having my phone number. I just want to mostly be left alone unless I'm like doing what I want to do, which engaging with poker stuff is pretty much near the top of the list. But I got into poker. I've always been a serious poker player. My mom raised me to play games. Games were always really important in my house. In my youth, growing up, I was definitely a bit of a sharp in high school. I paid for a lot of lunches and coffees playing euchre and backgammon and stuff like that. Games have always been a way to put beer money on the table, and it's a great way to learn about people too. And games are life. The way you get to make assumptions about people and apply pressure and things like that. It's great training for life. So I always appreciate that lesson from my mom for giving me that training. But it was something that, like I say, I was like a lurker. I was in the silo like Chris, and I listened to a lot of podcasts. I was very into poker podcasts. I remember in like 2013 or 2014 when Thinking Poker came out, and that one was like a real eye opener for me. I was a winning poker player before then, but I had not even really thought about poker in terms of like ranges. Even I think I had sort of like in the back of my mind been thinking about it, but I had never explicitly been thinking about playing ranges. I remember that just being such a pivot point, and like, what was I even doing before? Like that wasn't poker, and then I just started. I was just listening to every poker podcast out there because in my line of work, it was easy to be listening to something all the time, or I'd be driving around, and it was a good way for kind of like a solitary person like me to learn. And so that took. I mean, for years and years, I just listened to every poker podcast I could get my hands on, and then in 2019, I decided I was going to be going down to Vegas for WSOP coming up. I had a big birthday. Some friends and my wife had chipped in to put a package together for me, which I was really excited about. And I just decided, like, this summer, I'm just going to bone up. I'm going to get back to fundamentals. And I spent like 2 months and all the podcasts I would listen to, I would just think about like, okay, who are the people that I actually want to be learning with? And like, what's the level of poker that I want to be coming along for? And like, what's the price involved as well, because I'm a life nit. These guys will tell you, but if you don't know, I'm a big life nit. And honestly, RecPoker, I think Steve was just starting the community. And I think I was one of the first people to sign up for the old RecPoker site, back in 2019. I don't remember the name of the program it was on, but well, you guys will remember when I came in, I was just Poker Jim. I didn't have the camera turned on. I didn't want to like come out of my shell. It took a couple months of joining these weekly discussions and chipping in and feeling like I could be wrong about things or like just, voice my opinion, and people would tell me if I, like help me out. Right. Like that's one thing. It took me a long time to realize how valuable it is to be corrected. And like proud people don't want to be corrected sometimes because you think you've got it all figured out and you don't like to be wrong. But being wrong is like something you should embrace. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to get closer to truth, and it just takes a while for people to understand that, myself included.
Wasn't the book club the first thing? I think that's the first place I encountered you.
I think so.
On our very first book club.
Yeah, that sounds right. And there were a couple like ad hoc strategy discussions, like playing ace rag out of the blinds or something like that. But yeah, I think I think it was the book study that I finally turned my camera on.
Play optimal poker.
It was even before that. It was
it was Jonathan Little's Secrets of Tournament Poker.
Was it? I don't even remember. Oh my God, I'd have to go back and see.
I don't know of any other book studies that we did other than those two.
I remember it was Cheyenne was doing it.
It was Play Optimal Poker by Andrew Brokus.
Oh, crazy. That doesn't seem like that was so long ago. God, time flies.
That was back in 2019.
That was it then.
That was the first book study that we did with the new format of RecPoker.
Yep. Amazing. And that was kind of it. I joined. Steve and Chris and John and Rob and Taylor had all sort of started talking about what they wanted to do with the site and with the community. I got a little more involved in the strategy conversations. And then I just my real job, my day job, is a quality control inspector for residential and commercial properties in Southern Ontario, and they call me Picky Jim. The company name is Very Picky Incorporated, and I'm not perfectly adjusted. I am a little picky in some areas, and so one of the things that I think endeared me to Steve was every day he'd get a couple messages from me like, "Hey Steve, I noticed you got this on the website like this. Wouldn't it be better if it was like this? Hey Steve, here's another helpful tip. Here's another unsolicited helpful tip. I just noticed that you said you were going to put this out on Wednesday, but it's Wednesday and I don't see it. What's going on?" And so God bless Steve. he said, "Hey, this is a guy that can kind of help me, get to the next level with some of the things we're trying to do here." And that was how I got involved, was just sort of helping Steve with some of the little things around the edges and putting the calendar together and just like helping organize a couple things. And that's sort of still what I'm doing here. I just pinch hit for Steve every once in a while, host a couple sessions, make sure the calendar is running, and then mostly just sit back and listen to these fine folks spread their wisdom. But I see it's the only reason. One of the things I love is I can see people taking that. And I mean, that was only 2 years ago. And I see people now, premium members, community members, people like Jamel, Eric, Rich, people like Paul, and just to name a few, that reach out, try to contribute, have ways they want to help, thoughts to improve, ways that we can get better together. And it just warms my heart, like people like Kim Kilroy, who have really stepped up and joined the team. People like Chad McVean, we mentioned earlier, Mark, who's a big part of what we're doing. And, they can't be here right now, but Andrew Feist works hard every month putting our Learning with Partners stuff together. And Taylor, of course, is killing it on Twitch and contributing in a lot of ways that start later in the evening because he's got 2 girls to put to bed. So it does take a village. It takes everybody chipping in.
Yeah, and it's really crazy how much this has built. I mean, I remember those podcasts before I got involved where, Rob's voice was on there and there were other voices sort of like, and Steve was kind of like trying to figure out like, what are my optimal ranges and what are my optimal, playing styles. And they were great episodes, but it's really crazy how much it's sort of built into this, really community driven, piece, that the podcast is just one aspect of it, but there's so much going on now. And that's really all about kind of all the things that Steve has built around this. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean it's great because we've gone where people want, the members want us to go for the most part. Like at first we thought like we had this way that we thought everyone would like, and we're trying to like impose it on the membership. But now we're just flowing like water. We have these ways for people to get back, give feedback to us and to let us know what they want more of. We're changing things all the time, adding things, taking things off. And I'm just really proud of how the site in particular has come along and how the team is really just firing on all cylinders. To bring all this great stuff. And I mean, I was looking at the calendar recently. We release a new video every day. We release a new video every single day. Some of those are premium videos at RecPoker. Some of those are free videos at YouTube. But every single day there's a new video coming out. And 5 days a week, there's a live interactive, either a poker training or a hangout and engage kind of opportunity. Mostly in the evening, some in the afternoon. But there's just it's pretty impressive. If I do say so myself, that for a place that only charges $15 a month, we've got all that going. All right. Well, I know Steve would like to hear that because it really is all in his image. And Steve, we're sorry you couldn't be here tonight, but none of this would be anything without you here, and we're all just lucky to be along for the ride. So let's hear what our friend Jonathan Little has to say, and we'll come back and talk a little more about this wonderful place.
Wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it, or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at pokercoaching.com/recpoker right now.
I would do it, folks. You don't want to make Jonathan Little angry. His name's Little, but he packs a punch. Don't wake up the bear. So here we are. We're in the second half of the podcast. Normally we talk a little bit about some community happenings. Why don't we start with John? Why don't you take us through the home games? Then I'm going to introduce one of our premium members to come on and have a little conversation with us after that.
Sure. Since Steve's not here, I'm assuming I won't be interrupted.
Yeah, good luck, brother.
On June 21st, Stewie 13, Stuart Carrick,
Nice.
won his 6th daily nightly series event for the year. Flying Bricks, Sarah Hansen got her 5th. Fergie 56, Kim Kilroy got her 4th.
All sorts of killers.
Marbles Jam, Jeffrey Kupferberg got his very first win of the year. Monkey System Keith Brandt got his first win of the year. Hazy 08 got his first nightly event of the year. Now, this is a little bit deceptive. He had to change his screen name from Hazy 8 to Hazy 08.
That's right. The paparazzi got to him.
Right. And in my spreadsheets, I could go through and change them all so that all of the stats would be correct. But in the site that I am working on, I am going to have a concept of aliases. So for the time being, we will pretend that he is a new player. However, if you are on the table with Hazy 8 and you have any reads on, or Hazy 08 and you have any reads on Hazy 8, make sure you use them.
Yeah, Chris, what is that?
That is an intriguing story, I think. Was a copyright? What is going on there?
So it had something to do with his kid used the account for something, My guess is the account was transferred to one of the other PokerStars regions. Like I had a chance when PokerStars New Jersey came on board. I looked into signing up for that with Poker Geek MN because that's the thing I want to have everywhere I go. I am Poker Geek MN everywhere.
Yeah.
But what it was going to do is actually transfer my account from the PokerStars.net domain to the PokerStars New Jersey domain, and it would no longer be available in the main domain. I am guessing it's something along those lines.
Weird.
So he was no longer able to use his old account. So anyway, keep that in mind. It's not a brand new player. It's the same old person that we've always known and loved, but just a brand new screen name.
And you really did what am I? I'm having a brain fart here. You interrupted yourself there, John. To be fair, that's that Chris was just working with you there. You took a deep breath and paused. That one's on you.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I figure I have to be interrupted somehow. Normally, I can't keep my thought process clear long enough, so I need those interruptions to recapture where I'm at. Okay, so then for our daily series mixed event, Kelly S. 1962-20, Kelly Stork.
Kelly Stork.
Her very first mixed victory. Then our very own Bluff Streamy Jim Reed.
What?
His first international victory.
Oh my!
And it's legit.
It's legit. No, the only asterisk you can bring to that party is that I found the Saturday morning tournament with a small field, but open season, baby.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some watchers might notice I'm looking a little more symmetrical than I was before. I did sneak down to the Canadian headquarters, the vault, the merchandise vault, and got through the 7 layers of security there and liberated my pin right as soon as it happened. I was pretty excited.
Yeah. So for those of you just listening on audio, on the brim of his cap, he has the silver pin right in the middle. And he put that on like the
asterisk.
Yeah, he put that asterisk pin on his brim the very next day after he got it. And then he has that lined by 2 bronze pins on either side.
Looks good. It does look good, doesn't it? That's sharp.
I unfortunately have to agree. It does look good.
I like your military insignia line though. That is real. And you've got more pins than I do. So
yes, I do.
So, okay, John, there's this really wonderful Poker News photo of you from the Run Good series, and your hat has no pins on it. What happened?
So here's what happened. When I ordered my hats are embroidered with @PokerGeekMN on the back. Instead of sending me 1 hat, they sent me 9.
Oh my!
So I have 9 of these. Now in the future, I'm going to look at ways we can make use of those. But so I grabbed one of my backup hats to take down there because I did not want to risk losing one of the
smart.
pins.
Okay. All
smart.
Right.
Smart.
So in the
Savvy
future,
move.
you may see me in the card room with the pins. But for this particular event, I decided I did not want to risk losing them, and therefore brought a pinless hat. Okay, back on track. In international events, Rocket Box Poker, Woody Adams won his 4th international series event.
He is killing it on those Saturday international events. Man, I don't know what's happening with him. Good for you, Woody. You deserve it, buddy. You've been crushing those.
And then for the LPP Sunday event, 3-card fan Michelle Culhane got her first LPP victory. So be sure you contact Jim Reed at RecPoker, and you'll be able to get your free month to Learn Pro Poker.
That's right. Shoot me an email, jim@rec.poker, and I will send you the code you need to get that free month. And is that the end of the list there, Jim?
That's
we got all the way through.
That's
of course, this because that's Sunday night. All right. Well, let me see what else is going on in Rec Poker land. Rob, I know we're doing the Michael Acevedo Modern Poker Theory book study. I had to miss the last session, but I already watched the recording, and I'm looking forward to getting into the next chapter there. What are we looking at in the next session there, Rob? I think it's you're muted at the moment. We just looked at some of the tournament strategy, right?
Right. We're into the MTT strategy section of the book. We're going to be talking about the raise first in, or being the first to act. So there's going to be, and I got a feeling that this is going to be more than one session just on this part of it, because there's so much nuanced detail in each of the positions that he's talking about, and how the ranges change, how the bet sizing changes, those types of things. That's what we'll be talking about in session, I think it's session 7 now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that will be on July, help me here, 7th.
Yeah, I'm pulling that up. The first Wednesday of the month is July 7th. Good one.
So that would be a day after this particular podcast comes out. So everybody that is listening to this now can jump in. And if you haven't already, you can go back and watch the first 6 sessions on the website. As a premium member, you can jump in and watch those and get caught up with where we are, what rabbit holes we went down, what we've discussed as we go through the book chapter by chapter, and get caught up to where we are now. And of course, be helpful to read the book as you're doing this. That's what we're doing. And yeah, get caught up, join us. We're going to be talking about the equilibrium strategies of raising first in a multi-tournament table tournament.
Sweet. I love that stuff. We're going to find a few rabbit holes. Something tells me that's not going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
And Chris, I know we're actually recording. Oh, I see Paul's back here. That's great. Chris, I know we're starting the another version of the new seminar tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we'll be recording that tonight. So that'll be, by the time this podcast is out, you'll be able to watch, probably, I think they'll be out, the videos from that. And so we're focusing in on early stages of the tournament for this evening, and that should be a really fun conversation. The other thing I would say in sort of my content areas that I think you should start paying attention to is, so we've got our monthly focus study group. We've changed a little bit of direction around it. We're kind of following along with the Inside the Mind of the Pro series, which is a Winamax produced series, which I think is just fantastic. I've had a number of people personally thank me, and not that I did anything great. I just said, hey, this is great. You should. But they had never heard of it, and they just I've had I think 3 or 4 people reach out to me and just say, this is fantastic.
It's free, right? They can just go and watch
content. It's just YouTube based content, but we're going to have some really great conversations. I just saw Keith Monkey System put up a post for the next coming session based on an Adrian Mateos hand, which I think is it's just rich. It's rich with conversation. It's the kind of hand that can get you into a lot of trouble, which it gets me into a lot of trouble a lot of the time. And between Keith's analysis and between hearing Adrian Mateos's thoughts as he plays this hand, I think there's a lot to learn. So I think it's going to be a really fun as we progress through this series.
Yeah, I love the way you're using the focus, this monthly independent study group, to really get at this meat and potatoes stuff, these technical aspects of range building. Every month, we take a look at this episode. We pick a different member, different premium member who's going to use different tools like Flopzilla or Equilab or GTO Plus to break down the action, while Chris sort of walks them through it in our session. And then I actually run another monthly study group that just kind of works on that material and helps people with other questions that they have to prepare for the next session or to resolve on the back end of that. So it's a great program that you're running there, Chris, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'd like to introduce, so this is Paul, one of our new premium members. As people may or may not know, premium members are always welcome to come join us in the chat here for their podcast recording when we have guests. It's not just the training sessions and the other Zoom sessions that go on. You can come and join the podcast every once in a while. We like to bring them on the air just for fun. So Paul's one of these people that I was talking about earlier who only joined pretty recently, but they've been full of good ideas. They've been reaching out to me and John and Steve with ways we can improve. And it's just I just love to see people getting involved in that way. So, Paul, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about yourself to RecPoker Nation and how you found us and what brought you here.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, cheers, man. It's great to have you.
Not too experienced with Zoom calls with poker people. That's a first for me, but it's part of the reason I came to RecPoker. I feel like I know all of you because I've been catching up on all the podcasts and I've heard all the voices. And it was not till I discovered the video and actually saw your faces to go along with the podcast that I knew I had something special here, because I think you guys have nailed the interactive community online. As far as I know, you're the only people that do Zoom calls to talk about stuff and invite people in and can get deep into the stuff that the training sites have, but you have people and conversation. And that's why I came in. So how did I find you? On a podcast. So I feel like I have a lot in common with all of you, just listening to your stories. But I've been into poker seriously for just a couple of years. I played recreationally for, it was a home game that started in the moneymaker boom neighborhood game. We picked it up. It was fun, but it involved a lot of drinking and social aspects, not a lot of serious poker. In that day, of course, I eventually gravitated to some stuff online on PokerStars. And funny story, I still had 10 cents left in my PokerStars account when I signed up for the home game. And I saw that it was PokerStars.net, and then I found the instructions on the website to use a VPN to download the real client. I still had an account with them, so I signed up. I mean, I got in there and it said I still had 10 cents left in my account from Black Friday. So it was like, wow, I've struck gold here.
That's right. You're rich.
I just can't spend it anywhere yet until I move out. Pretty funny stuff.
Oh, that's great.
But in terms of in the past couple of years, I've been listening to podcasts, poker podcasts. I love poker podcasts, and it was through that. And Spotify makes recommendations, and this thing popped up, RecPoker. What is that? So I clicked on it, and it took me to a podcast. I think it was Facing Limpers or something. Sorry for the dog in the background.
Yeah, we love dogs here, don't we?
So it's Facing Limpers. I say, well, this is certainly interesting. And then I started to, Spotify kept recommending things. It recommended a Steve Fredland interview on the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. And on that interview, Steve kind of laid out a vision for RecPoker that this is really interesting. And then Spotify recommended a RecPoker podcast that was a Steve Fredland talking by himself because a guest had dropped out, talking about his vision for an hour. And it just absolutely hooked me, because it's like, this is what I've been looking for, is the training sites. I'm a member of several training sites, and it's a good value, but it's just me, right? It's just me studying this stuff, and there's a Discord channel perhaps, or a forum behind, but it's not people. And then as I engaged with RecPoker, I could see people, and I could hear voices, and I could see faces. And then I started chatting. Of course, I sent some comment to Jim, and he responded like instantly. And I said, wow, this is great. And then I by background, I'm a technology person. I've been in software in commercial software for 30 years. So I saw that John, as his attribute, poker geek, I could tell he had a technical background, and I felt they probably had something in common. So I sent a note to him, and John was kind enough to share his amazing architecture, how he manages it all. It's so if I'm able to help in some small way, it'll probably be on the technology side. But so like I said, I've only been playing seriously since like 2018. Because the home game was petering out, and it just wasn't of interest. So at that time, I signed up for. As far as poker playing, it's all online. So
right,
I played on Bovada, I played on Ignition, strange sites, but did okay.
Yeah.
Signed up for. I started listening to Red Chip Poker podcast,
Mhm.
and that kind of introduced me to the world of poker podcasts. And now I play on ACR. I play on Global. I love Global
Mhm.
because it's a fun site. It's pretty soft, and it's a strange financial model. It's a sweepstakes model, but after you get through all of that, it's legal and they pay out. So
Yeah, that's right. We'll take what we can get, right?
which is a good thing. But so I have to. How did I find this? It was Steve. It was his vision video. But then as I dug in, and I feel like I've met all of you. I've reached out to all of you, but I certainly have been. I can probably identify your faces and voices just from the podcast. So I'm kind of engaging as I'm able to. There's a lot there. There's a lot to catch up on, but and I think the focus that Chris has, I'm going to learn so much there because it's at a level of thinking about poker that is still above me, but not too far above me. So I'm going to share a bad beat story. I was on the LPT tournament last night, and I was final table, final 9, final 6, final 4. It was one huge stack and three shallower stacks, and I was I got pocket aces. So
okay.
I jammed, right? It's like, this is it, man. I got this nailed, and I went up against East Coast Bitter.
Ben, my buddy Ben,
and he had ace king.
Oh no!
Oh no!
So yes. So what comes out on the flop is a king, right? And then it's a non-card, and then on the river, it's a king. So the 3 of a kind kings blows out. And darn! I had this thing locked up.
Is it the 4 left in the final table?
4 left. I would have been 3, and it would have had a huge stack. And so it goes.
I was certain it was going to be the old Queen Jack 10 flop.
Me too.
That's
I thought
always
for
my
sure.
little favorite. when I've got aces.
No, it was ace
But
king.
you went the other way.
It was pocket aces against ace king, and he got 2 kings. The river, he only had 2 outs, 2 kings. Right? So anyway, good stuff. Came back close.
There you go.
But
yeah, that's right.
I've played in 16 home games, and I've final tabled 5 times now. So
Oh,
it's only a matter of
that's
times.
impressive.
It's
That's
only a matter of
impressive.
times. This is the second time I've hit 4.
Nice.
So it's only a matter of time before I come in. And I just want to say congratulations to John, kind of following you on the live poker journey that you just returned from.
No, it was great.
So I don't play any live poker, but it was great fun to imagine how exciting that must have been.
Yeah, no kidding. In fact, John, why don't you tell us just a little bit about? I know you were down there with Steve. You actually did pretty well in the Run Good event down there. Tell us a little bit about what that was like before we wrap up for the night.
Yeah, well, so Steve and I went down there, and Steve had already made day 2 in the deep stack event previously. I had been just bricking everything. I didn't cash in a single event. As you may remember in the last one of the previous podcasts, I announced that I would be donating all of my winnings for the bounty tournament to KL Cleaton's fan. So I will be sending a check for $0 and 0 change.
As promised. Always a man of his word.
Yep. But then we got down there and into the main event. I played day 1A along with Steve, and neither one of us made it through. So then, and I had pretty much decided before the tournament that I was only going to fire 1 bullet at it, because normally my direct buy-in limit is $500. Those tournaments are $575. But I was just enjoying myself so much, and the room was at capacity, so they were unable to run cash games. That's how many people were showing up, that where they actually make their money from cash games, they couldn't run them.
Wow.
So I decided to give it a second try, second bullet. And I entered day 2 with the 3rd largest ship stack in the field.
Wow.
So that was good. And for the
That
first
was
couple
good.
of hours, my chip stack just kept going up. I almost never lost. And then I went through a period that was a little bit of a downer, but I kind of regrouped, regathered, and did make it in the money, finished 32nd, 90 places were paid. We were still in kind of the flat ramp up portion. And after I noticed Steve went out, we were playing at that point 45-minute levels. And we had about a half an hour left in this level and one more level before there was going to be a 45-minute break. And I decided that where I was just kind of treading water, keeping my chip stack about the same. I wasn't actually building it. And of course, with the blinds going up, that means my chip stack was actually getting smaller as far as the functionality it had within the tournament. So I figured that before I wanted to, if I was going to play past the dinner break, I wanted to have a chip stack that was at least competitive. So, and I was down to about 10 blinds. So I wasn't doing anything really silly. I was still taking it seriously, but I was trying to find places where I could double my stack. Ended up being, I think I was in the small blind. Someone in late position had opened. So I was in the small blind. It was either 13 or 15 big blinds. I don't remember which for sure. Shoved with Queen Jack suited, got called in the big blind by Ace Queen.
That's not what you want.
Original razor. Yeah, the original razor ended up folding.
Right.
And then there was no Jack. So I went home after that. But it's still good. It was I cashed out for $1,953 on a $575 buy-in.
That's
so great. You know, I'm happy with that.
And Paul's happy because the best hand free flop won. At the end of it, anyway.
Yeah.
It wasn't. You didn't lay a bad beat on
Yes,
somebody.
well, that's a story I have now. How my pocket aces, but
Exactly.
I'll get them next time.
I should mention,
the chip leader actually came. He came in third, so
there you go.
Yeah.
It was
That's right. Well, there's no tournament without a bad beat story, and I always tell people, like, especially these big field tournaments, like, you're not going to win that tournament if you don't lay some bad beats on other people too.
It's
so
tough competition.
Yeah.
I remember, here's another story for you. The very first game I played against Monkey System.
Oh yeah.
And he jammed me with pocket eights and I had pocket tens. So that was fun. I had no idea who Keith was. He thought he was going to tear me out. And,
yeah. He's great. One of those great members here at RecPoker. Keith contributes a lot in all those sections.
I do want to mention one other thing. For those of you who have never played a Run Good series, Run Good series is the RecPoker of series. It is a wonderful community. The people who run it are fantastic people. They were just walking through the tournament with smiles on their faces, absolutely having a blast. So they have the same philosophy about poker that we do, that it's all about having fun.
That's great.
So I cannot
So I live on
recommend
the
it
East
enough.
Coast. So I live on the East Coast. I'm going to have to plan a road trip.
That's it. We got to get a RecPoker road trip going.
They just announced a poker series in Florida that's going to be happening.
Okay. I go to Florida too. That's cool.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm halfway up in the hot and humid zone of the Mid-Atlantic. So.
Well, then you're close to everything on the Eastern Seaboard. You're going to be in trouble now.
We just got done with all the cicadas. So.
Oh yeah, right. Well, speaking of getting done, we should probably wrap this baby up. It's been a fun hour. Does anyone have anything else they want to share at the end? Here, Paul, why don't you just tell some folks what's your player name in the home game? If people see you, they can say hello.
QuadQuark. So
QuadQuark.
QuadQuark, yeah, and it's Quark on for RecPoker, but it's QuadQuark everywhere else. ACR. Any place else you find me, it's QuadQuark. So.
All right. John, Chris, Rob, anything else we should throw at our listeners before we roll on out? Not seeing anything. I guess I'd like to thank Paul, Rob, John, Chris, Martha for joining us here in the chat. Of course, Website Amp and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And Steve Fredman for being a great host all the time. Thanks so much, everyone. See you later.